This and all talks at the 2019 JavaScript for WordPress Conference are brought to you in part by our sponsors Pantheon, a high-performance hosting platform with agile developer tools. Check them out at pantheon.io.
Hey everybody, we are back for the 12 p.m. session in the JavaScript track here, the JavaScript for WordPress conference. And for this one, we have another treat for you. We have Julien Melissas presenting on React for Effect. Now, Julien is a developer with a passion for clean and efficient code, redoing things until they're just right. Julien is a co-founder and technical director at CraftPeak, where he works on web stuff to support craft breweries all over the world. He's on the Roots.io development team and loves working on open source when he's not in front of the screen. You can find him in the mountains of Western North Carolina on his BMW GS adventure motorcycle or out in the yard with his big dog, Wilbur. Without further ado, I'm going to pass on to Julien.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I am Julien. I'm going to be presenting on, this was kind of hard to come up with a title, so Zach kind of helped me out, but React for Effect. And we're not actually talking about like effects. We're not talking about like transitions and animations. That was kind of covered a little bit in the last session. What I'm going to be talking about is kind of peppering your experience in WordPress with React. So just little places where you think, okay, well, I could, make this kind of a normal, like, let's let this load kind of interaction. But instead kind of going a little bit above that and just using React in the places that you need it. But now that it's there, I want to encourage people to use it in small places, right? So when I mean now that it's there, I mean like WordPress now includes React, right, as part of core. So it's there. We should use it. But before, I already got an introduction, so thanks so much. And just so you guys know, if I'm looking that way, it's because my window is on that screen for the crowdcast thing. But yeah, a little bit about me. I'm the technical director at CraftPeak. We make websites and web applications for really dope breweries. We have probably, I think, 80 breweries now. I'm a big fan of beer. I grew up in a beer town. Asheville, North Carolina is a very beer-centric place. And we started a business, and it kind of just happened to end up focusing in that, and now that's what we do. We use WordPress primarily for our products, but we also have started building things in other tools like Laravel, and I've also done React work for about 5-6 years now, probably. So a decent amount of experience with React. I also am on the Roots.io or the Roots development team. You can find us at Roots.io. We do lots of really cool stuff. I won't go into it too far. Those who know might know. I actually totaled my BMW. I totally gave you an old thing. I killed it off road, but that's a little bit of what the mountains of Western North Carolina look like in the winter when there's no leaves on the trees, and that's my new motorcycle. It's a KTM 690 adventure bike, kind of. And then there's my dog Wilbur, and he's actually like probably, there's a couch right there, and he's probably in the exact same position. So what we're actually going to do today is look through a lot of code. I'm going to kind of stop sharing this here and see, first of all, just kind of explain what we're going to do is we're going to be looking through a decent amount of code today, and also just kind of like on the front end. First, let me explain, and I'm not going to use slides for this. I'm just going to kind of free form it here. So the first thing is, and let me find the right window. I'll move this over here. We run a WooCommerce, a big WooCommerce multi-site. And what that means is that we have a lot of clients that are using WooCommerce kind of individually for their own little sites, and then we are able to manage everything using one code base with a multi-site. And so every single one of our clients has like kind of a mini site. And so as a good example, let me first of all just show you guys like craftpeak.com. This is unrelated, but this is the website for our company. but you can see we do the craft beer thing. One of our clients I actually want to talk about today is Dea Brewing, and they're a site that we recently launched they're out of the UK, and we recently launched their site. And one of the cool things about our clients in the UK is that they're actually able to sell beer directly to their consumers. So let's, and you can see they have like a really cute little website. So this is kind of part of what we do, is building these really nice sites. But I'm gonna go to their shop, because today they actually have like a sale going on right now where they're selling some beers. They usually do that weekly. And then if you order it online, you have to be in the UK, but if you order it online, it is shipped to you really quickly. So I don't know if anybody in the UK is on today or wants to wave if you've had a day of beer, but feel free. So one thing that we do is we kind of have these mini stores where we're able to sell the beer online. Once the beer is sold though, so like if I put an order in and go in and complete it, that beer has to be picked up. And so instead of using the WooCommerce backend, we actually have a orders backend where we're able to really quickly kind of index all of the orders that have come through and sort them and make it really easy for the people who are packing the beer, or the people who might be coming to pick it up, like the bartender, who are going to be delivering, like kind of giving that beer over the counter, for them to just really quickly look up the person's name and the email or their order number and then mark the beer off. So obviously you could do this inside WooCommerce. You could go into the orders, and this is a test shop that I'm showing you, so we're not showing you live data. But this is the classic WooCommerce order screen, and you might be familiar with this if you've done any WooCommerce work. So for example, like here's an order from my business partner, Corey Bowman. It's like on a test site. Order number 195. It's kind of taken a little bit of a while to load. You can see, okay, it has this product in it. And now if we wanted to, we could, mark this order as completed. It's already complete, but we can mark this order as completed. We can also see what's in it. This would take a really long time if you're packing, or if you're somebody who's going to be like kind of preparing these things right at the bar. We have a lot of breweries in the United States where you can't ship beer, but you can pick beer up at the brewery and kind of pre-order it online. So as a bartender, you're kind of doing a lot of different things. You may be getting somebody a beer or something, and you just really want to really quickly be able to look through that. And the orders aren't that fast. Now, there are some other options for this, and we actually do use Meta, which is a fantastic application. But for those who aren't don't want to be super complicated with the pickups and stuff, we don't want to present them all this information. We want to show them this is the order, and we want to kind of allow for them to play with it a little bit. So, and what I mean by that is just changing from processing to completed, and also see what's available. So what we did was we ended up building this pickup dashboard. And this is a very simple looking, basically kind of like application. The admin bar isn't there, and there's other things that aren't there. It's really just a super, super simple page with basic stuff. And what I mean by that is this is really just a list of orders that have come through, and then an ability to click on an order and load it from the back end and view basic information, such as this is what this person ordered, this is this person's billing information, and this is this person's order proxy. We use a special plugin so that people can have proxies, and then we also have customer notes. So I hope everybody's following me so far, and we're gonna see some code in a little bit. But the end of the first part, which is what's happening right now, is basically like we took this experience and spent a little bit of time building this experience, which really is a lot smaller. It's very limited in scope. It's really easy for a bartender or somebody new to open this up and do what they need to do. And then you can see, for example, I can open this and I can mark it as completed. And that's all it does, right? So Done. Okay. So that's pretty cool. That is basically like what I'm talking about building today. And I'll show you guys some code as well as, just kind of talk through why you might do this. So what I mean by React for effect, going back to the title, is really just the effect of, wow, this is really easy. And this is a really small thing that we can do very simply and quickly. Before I go into showing you the React code, I would like to also show everybody or kind of talk a little bit more about how we built this. And keep in mind, this is like a living, breathing product. I just wanted to have a real example that I could explain that was really simple. We use React all throughout the back end and throughout the front end in our projects. But this was a really good example that was small enough in scope that I could explain quickly, or at least within, 45 minutes or something. I just also want to say, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, and I'll either answer them or I'll let them hang out until the end. So one thing I want to say is just like kind of talk about how we built this. So we've got orders in the back end, and these orders can be queried from the WooCommerce backend, but it would take a really long time to query, especially if we're trying to do an autocomplete. So for example, I want to search for all orders with a person from hello@craftpeak.com, or I need to search somebody's last name. That's going to happen often because we get an ID and an address. And this is a type ahead. This is like an autocomplete. So we need something a little bit better than WooCommerce's order really quick. So we actually use, I know it's going to sound crazy, but we're kind of the path of least resistance, especially with our products when we are first building them. It makes a lot more sense for us to kind of first build a product, see how it works, and then iterate on it. So we're actually using a plugin called FacetWP. And I'll just go here so you can kind of I can kind of give them a little plug. We really like their filtering and sorting library. And so FacetWP actually generates this table layout. So this isn't React at all. It just generates this table layout and has a filtering system and kind of has an index, which is what makes it so powerful. It has an index for every single one of these orders. And then these orders are searchable really quickly via the name, the email, and the order number. So I can also put in like 206, right? And then it'll find me order number 206, okay? And then you can also see we've got these URLs kind of persist throughout the application, which is really nice because we can send this link, for example, we can send this link to somebody if we're someone on support and we want to help our clients be able to find all the orders from Corey Bowman in a time period. So this is JavaScript. So I'm still kind of talking about JavaScript, but more importantly, this is a totally different plugin. It works really well. It works really nice. It's giving us the index that we need and the data that we need. Where React takes over, and actually, let me just show you this because we've got a little bit of time to cover code. I want to, hopefully everybody can see this. I made the text really big. This is just like the plugin setup file. So we're making new facets and we're registering that in the code. I'll come back to where we're enqueuing our scripts and stuff like that. But let's talk about the facets here. We have two facets. We have a search, which is that search bar that you saw, and we have a status. And so let me kind of run back here just so that you can see the search is here. This is this facet. And the status is here. And these are our order statuses, or order status. So we have our completed, processing, and canceled. If I hit reset, that's just a reset button that we have in Facet. Okay, so let me, wrong way. Go back so you can see we have order search and order status. And then we also have some custom code so that we can search, like I mentioned, the order number, the billing full name, and the billing email. And so that's just telling Facet right here that it also needs to look through these order numbers, email, and full name to generate the index. And the index is this really big search index table in the database. We're not talking about JavaScript, but I want to tell you at least where these things are from. So now, you guys are going to laugh. You're going to be like, okay, there's a lot of like jQuery in here and stuff like that. That is perfectly fine. We are going to use everything that WordPress gives us to build our products quickly And if they work really well and they're documented well, we can always refactor and build this. This was a project that was built in probably less than a week or 2 weeks. And so this allows us to work really quickly and also make quick edits. We're also just using everything that WordPress gives us. So if you go back up here in the scripts, you can see, you can see right here that I'm saying that our front end JavaScript file requires jQuery, WP element, and WP API fetch. And these are 2 libraries that are inside WordPress core now as part of Gutenberg. WP element is a wrapper around React, and WP API fetch is a fetch wrapper, but it allows for some really cool stuff, especially when we're talking about authentication. And we're going to get into that a little bit. I really want to show everybody all the code if I can get to it. One more thing is, if you look at this, this is really basic, right? This is not a lot of stuff, and React isn't even in here. React is included with calling WP element, and I'm actually using Mix, which is a Webpack, a layer on top of Webpack. It's a builder from the Laravel community, and this is how small my Webpack config is because of Laravel Mix. And you can see that I've defined 2 externals, jQuery and React, so that I can do import React and import jQuery. I just want to just really quickly, you can see this is how the files are being minified, and these are how the SAS is being minified. It's very minimal. I hope we're following. Unfortunately, I can't share this because it's a private repository, but I hope that people are welcome to look through this code and go back through the live stream recording as much as you want. So really quick, I'm going to go back to the front end, the basic front end code, because this is what gets included on there. And you can actually see that right here we're initializing a very accessibility friendly thing called the micromodal. It's a library that I recommend using. And then there's also a jQuery call right here that just says when we've clicked an order number, we're going to prevent the default, and we're going to make the order number as just a variable set that's in the data. And that is something that I think I can show you. If we look at the template that is generating the markup from here. So we're looking at this whole template right here. That template is right here. And we've got a table because tables are still totally okay to use for tabular data. We've got a table. We've got these 4 columns, and you can see right here on this order, we grab the ID for the order right here. And so we're picking up here, and then we're rendering this React element, and this might look familiar if you've done some React work. You can see right here we're calling render and create element from WP element, and we are rendering the order wrapper component, which I'll show you in a minute, giving it this scope, and we're setting that to the order info. And you can see in this template orders, we've got order info somewhere in here or somewhere on the page. So you can see this has a custom page template, and so we're using that for the order info here. And so there's probably a little div. If I were to inspect here at the bottom, there's an order info div. And when we open this, it's going to show the window. It's going to load the data. And then React is taking over at this point. It's and I'm going to show you that here in this order wrapper component. Hope everybody's following me and that this is a okay format here. So I've got a couple components, and I think you can probably see this at least a little bit. We've got that front end, which again is calling this order wrapper component. So let's go into the order wrapper component and just see how we're using this. And again, React for effect, this is literally just a very tiny utility. This React is not even working when you first load the page, okay? So when I reload this page, React hasn't kicked in at all once this page is loaded. And React is only kicking in when we're clicking on an individual order. I think this is the power of having React in WordPress now, is we can use it in really small ways. But eventually, if I wanted to build a single page application that was specifically for order pickups, I think that would be really cool, because we would already have some of the components and some of the logic that we needed in order to make these calls. So I'm going to go back here and just show you the component. And we've got, this component is very much a React component, but you can notice up here, I have constant component. It comes from, this is destructuring, comes from the element here, WP element. And then we have API fetch, of course, coming from WP API fetch. And if you didn't know, you can always open up the inspector. This is actually kind of a fun little thing to know. If you open up the inspector and look at the console, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, but you can now see that the WP element is available, right? And there's a couple of things that get attached to the WP element. And because I said that, hey, we need API fetch and hey, we need element, you can see that we can actually access WP.API fetch here. And you can see that's just a function that we need. And then there's WP.element. And this is a couple things that you can grab from, but you can see this component. So that's what allows us to run this, make that a little bit bigger maybe. That's what allows us to run this here. We're just grabbing this straight from the page, okay? And I do want to say we actually built this before API fetch and WP element were part of like the WordPress core. And it's really funny, but I just actually switched it out a couple weeks ago, and the builds went to be a lot smaller because we're no longer including React. We're no longer including these extra wrapper components. It's all built into WordPress. And so now this entire application, and I'm sure I can make it smaller, but this application is only about 20 kilobytes. So it's a really small load. It's a really small thing to load. And that's because WordPress already includes React and stuff in the backend. So I hope you're following me. We've enqueued that. And now we're actually just looking at how this order wrapper is built. So we're going to import this order component, and you can see that I've got this a folder where I keep the order component and then some other things that the order component is going to need. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But our default state for this is order loaded is false, and the order data, we know it's going to be an object, but it's empty now because we don't have any order data yet. And on component mounting, we're going to load the order data from this props order number, which I think if you remember and you look at the front end, we grab this by taking the order number from the data attribute. And this is really, pretty, I'm not doing any crazy magic here. We grab the order number with the order attribute, and then we pass that in as a property using create element. I'm not sure if you're ever familiar with this, but I'm gonna kind of pseudocode here, sorry. I'm gonna kind of pseudocode, but this would also be, this is kind of what this is doing. It's grabbing the props in there. So it's saying like order number as a prop is gonna be passed in. Let me open up that one again because it went away. So we've got a couple props, right? We've got order number, and we've got the other one, which is the order edit link. And so you can see this is on component will mount, and it's grabbing this load order data. Okay, so let's see the load order data really quick. This is a function that I obviously didn't finish documenting. I should say function to grab order data. So what we do here is and this is where it gets really cool. We have a nonce that we need to generate, and this is generated globally in the WordPress scope, actually thanks to the localized script. And you can see here, I've got the WC fulfillment dashboard / front end is kind of my handle for WP localized script. And WC fulfillment dashboard nonce is a variable that's available now in the public in the front end. So because I localized this script here, this front end script, which again, we are enqueuing below, you can see right here, WC Fulfillment Dashboard front end. You can see that I'm localizing that script with this variable. And I'm just saying, hey, create a nonce and make it this. So we're going to use that nonce. And thanks to API fetch, we can use the nonce by doing API fetch.use and then API fetch create nonce middleware. And then you pass it this nonce. So if we're not familiar with what a nonce is, it's basically just a key that's been generated by WordPress that allows us to say, hey, we have the permission, we have the ability to run this action. And because we're grabbing orders, like orders are, private data with people's addresses and phone numbers and, stuff like that, what they bought, maybe even the last four of their credit card. So, or maybe at least the Stripe key. So it's really important for us to use nonces in the front end. So in order to fetch orders, you have to be authenticated. A nonce allows us to be authenticated. And so we've got the API fetch, which we're actually calling. This is the URL that we're going to be calling. We're saying, okay, hit /wc/v2/orders, and then hit this order number, which is just the REST API, the WooCommerce REST API. And then after that, take the response, which is going to be the order, and we're going to set the state of the order to, okay, yes, first of all, yes, we've loaded the data, it's there, so true for that. And then the order data, we're going to use the data that we got as a response from WooCommerce and load it into the order data. So I know this is really technical, but I hope you're following kind of what this does. And then once this is complete, you can actually see we've got, once this is complete, and so this runs on component will mount, and then we've got a couple things, right? We've got our order number and our order edit link, and then we also have the state inside the application. So we've got if this.state.order loaded, so if the order is loaded, pass the data from the order and into this order component. So the order wrapper is kind of like a higher order component in that all it does is grab data from a ID of an order that's been passed to it. And I hope that it's helpful to be seeing this code, but the loading is if basically like we're saying like, okay, if the order has been loaded, then show the data, but if not, just show loading. So you can see right here, if I click an order, it's going to show loading, and then it's going to pop in the order information. All right. Cool thing is that your browser might actually cache these requests a little bit, so subsequent requests could be a little quicker. You see that? And we're loading the data, and then we're popping it in here. Now, there's some additional logic that I'm not going to talk about right now because I want to make sure we have time for everything else, but there's some things that you have to remember. When you're dealing with kind of like we're putting data in a component. So we are using a couple of things. On component will receive props and component will unmount. I like to clean things up when I unmount components so that they're clean if I need to remount them later. Let's talk a little bit about the order component. And then I think it's all going to start making sense a little bit more once we see this order component. So we've got a couple of things. We've got a currency formatter library that we're using, and this is being installed using like Yarn. And then we have our components here. So we've got billing information, order details, order item, and order status buttons. So we've got like little components that we need for our order component, our kind of like master order component. When I'm talking about what our master order component is, it's this. So it's all of this information that you're looking at inside the modal. And again, this order component is mounted right here in the order wrapper. Ta-da! We've got the order pop-up content, and we've got this data that we're passing in, and also an edit link, and that's coming straight from WordPress. So let's go into the order and just take a look at what that might look like. So first thing you can see is we've got a state that we're keeping locally just to see if buttons are disabled or not. And that's because we don't want people to click a million times when we're making API calls. So we don't want someone to click completed on hold processing and then like keep clicking things, because that's going to fire the orders, kind of like the changes really quickly. So what I mean by that is like, let's click this and then see how they're disabled. And then once we get a response back from the server, that's when it's done. So you can see that has been done here now. Okay, so we kind of pull out our order data, and this is everything that we need from the order. We're kind of like basically destructuring the call that we get back from the WooCommerce API. And if you need to see what that looks like, you can go to the WooCommerce API documentation and scroll down to the area that shows a single order call. That's all we're doing, and then we're grabbing it back here. We filter the metadata a little bit to find if there's an order proxy, and if not, it just won't return that. And then we return this div back, which is the full information of the order. So we've got the order number. I think you can probably remember this order edit link is here in this props. We've got the order modal content, which includes a billing information component, which we pass in, and the order details, which is we pass in order proxy and a customer note, if those things exist. And then we have this little table that runs over the line items, which again is a WooCommerce thing. And then we pass the order item component, and we give it a little bit of currency information, because we have to show currency for each of these things. So for example, the currency that WooCommerce has set up is a US dollar. And you can see that this is actually done per order in the order response. And so we're passing it that the currency is a US dollar, and so it formats it correctly. We have clients in the UK and clients in the US. So again, it's really important for us to show the right currency. So we've got that little library that we're using for that. And then we've got this order status button kind of component. And we're actually, this might look like a little fancy maybe, but it's really not that crazy. It's an array that I've defined right here for completed, on hold, and processing. And then I have a map where it basically just says like, we've got we're going to need a button for completed, a button for on hold, and a button for processing. And then basically saying like on click, we're going to change the order status. And then you can see that there's a function for that. I don't have to go through this whole thing one by one, I don't think. But again, we still have a nonce that tells us we need to do what we need to do. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tell the API to actually change the status. And this is it. That's all we have to do. And then if it gives us a valid response back, we're replacing the orders data so that it's new. So let's now we've seen kind of how it works. Let's go through again. I'm going to refresh the page. Hopefully this was helpful. I'm going to refresh the page, and we're looking at the dashboard now. And we've got these facets, again, not React. So as soon as I'm going to click this, React is loaded, the order wrapper loaded, and the order wrapper was right here. And actually, I can turn on my dev tools. This might be really helpful to see. See if the React dev tools will load up. You can see we have the order wrapper here, and you can see these are these components. So order wrapper, order pop-up content, and then this is our order. And then you can see this is where all of these kind of props come in. So you can see there's the edit link, and here's the data from the order. You can see the currency, US dollars. And so this is all the data that's returned from the WooCommerce REST API. Hopefully I'm not boring us too much here. So we're loaded in here. Everything looks good. Okay. And let's just use, and so you can see like order information, this edit order link can open it up like basically, so like if they need to do anything too crazy, they can open it up here. It's running a little slow because my internet seems like it's pretty busy hanging out with you guys. But you can see we've got the order details in here. And then I can change any of these buttons. So again, when I click a button, it's going to fire that change order status event. and it loaded that for me. And we can also see that in the network tab if we want. We can see I called testshop.craftpeak.shop, WC JSON, and then you can see I called orders 135. And then there was a nonce here that happened. And then you can see that we returned this with that data that we wanted, that the new status is going to be completed. And then it returned back and said, okay, yay, there you are, no problem. It actually responds with the new order. So anytime you make a change, it responds with the new order, which is nice, and which is why we use this replace order data function. All that replace order data function does is changes the order that we're currently looking at and replaces all the data so that it can kind of re-render with the correct data, just in case like they change like a billing information or something that would actually look different here. In this case, it just kind of changes which one of these is current. And that's it. So basically, the point of this talk is to say you can have very small bits of code that do really helpful things for your customers. And because and actually, look, there's a bug right there. Because this is something that you can do really quickly with React built in, you can also, yeah, sure, of course, you could use JavaScript or just like plain JavaScript or jQuery or whatever you wanted to build this. But to me, building things in React is a really good way to look at things in the future, because I could say, okay, you know what, we're going to have a custom React app that just does this dashboard pickup. And all I have to do is actually grab my components over. I don't need to completely rewrite everything. I just need to rewrite this screen because this is the only part that isn't built in React, which we're actually considering doing with the different search index and all that stuff. So this allows us to really build little helpful interactive bits and not have to overthink it too much. You can see, I mean, like we're not going to count every single line of code, but most of these files are less than 120 lines, and I think that means a lot. If you look at the billing information component, I mean, that's really small. It's 25 lines. That's all it needs to do. That's all it needs to look like. And this is specifically just posting billing information with a little bit of markup. And you can also see how really similar this looks to this looks really similar to just HTML. It's a really friendly thing, easy thing to get your head around. I know Gutenberg blocks can be a similar kind of experience where really you're just kind of writing out HTML. But again, we're just kind of building little bits so that we've got this goes miles for our clients and is a lot easier to use. Hopefully you learned something. I'll put thanks somewhere up here, but really just I would love to answer questions, or if you need me to re-explain a part, I'm happy to do that. Okay, it looks like there's one question that came in through the chat. Do we import the data for the products, or is it entered manually? And I think that what you mean is for all of the beers, like for our clients, maybe like if we import the data. I'll answer this question two ways, Mitch. For our initial products that we put into the system, that's manually entered from our clients. Although we are working on an integration with like it's kind of like a brewery management software. It's like a CMS, but for a brewery. And if they say, hey, we have 100 cans of this available, it'll actually like just automatically put it up on the store. If you mean if I import the data for the products, what I'm picking out of my dashboard, again, it's actually just Facet, which we might have forgotten. We've got Facet kind of running, and the Facet's just going to index all of the orders and then provide us the products via the WooCommerce API, like when it kind of pops up here in that line items code that I showed. Hopefully that answers your question. Mirko, I hope I said that name right. How are you handling possible errors with API fetch? So great question. Error handling, right? That's a good topic. And I was actually thinking like, man, I should give another talk about error handling sometime because I think that's important. It is important. However, look how much error handling I didn't do here. In fact, I don't do any, which is horrible. But again, this is really small usage. This is probably 10 or 15 clients that use this. And we're always expecting a response. Now, if their internet went out, let's just say they unplugged everything, this would not work super well. It would probably just sit at loading and not look really good. Error handling can be entered, and I'm going to go back here and look at API fetch here. There's a then here, and this is a promise. So this returns a promise. So we can actually continue to use methods like a catch, or other ways to catch errors, and then display an error message. This is actually one of the things that we're working on for the next version of this plugin, is a little bit better error handling. My suggestions usually for error handling is to use the defaults as much as you can. But because you just asked this question, there's another really cool thing that was just recently used in React. So I'm not sure 100% if WordPress's version of React is up to date with it. But there's an error boundary in React, and this is one thing. I'll just pop this link in the chat. But error boundaries is a really cool thing in React, and what this is it's actually a higher order component that you would wrap your components, your component with. So, like for me, it would be the order, probably the order wrapper, or the order that I would wrap it in an error boundary. And the error boundaries can actually just say, okay, hey, we got an error, now do something with the application. So it's a really nice way to say there was an error somewhere in one of the components. Let's just render an error page instead. So I'm gonna post this in the chat. Again, this is a newer React thing. I would have to ask them. I would have to go and look and see if WordPress has this version of React yet. This is React 16. I would have to look, but I would highly recommend using error boundaries as a good way to show and change your UI if there's an error. So we've got one more question here. What web apps do you prefer to use React? What web apps do you not prefer? Personally, it's totally personal preference. I've worked with Angular 1, so not the new Angular, but I've worked with Angular 1, I've worked with Ember, and I've worked with React, and React for about 4 or 5 years. I would build any web application that requires a reactive front end in React because I know it well. I've also seen lots of really cool applications built in Ember, Angular, and Vue, so I'm not going to tell you which one to use. I just have a personal preference. There are some applications that I think are overkill to build in React. One really prime example might be what we have built ourselves. So we have WooCommerce, and on top of WooCommerce, we have a ton of stores, and we have an entire multi-site network. We power 40 stores. I don't think that I would completely rebuild that in React. That doesn't make any sense, right? The back end is working. Maybe WordPress is like a little slower than it could be, but it provides me a lot of flexibility with plugins and support in WooCommerce. So my suggestion would be, when you're thinking about building a web application altogether, do you need it to be reactive? Is it a back end? If it's a back end, maybe you don't need to build that in something like even in JavaScript. Like maybe it makes more sense to build that with WordPress. And I know the headless track has been covering that all day. A tiny plug. Some web apps I don't recommend using like React for. We just finished building a backend, and we used Laravel for that. And so Laravel handled all of the data handling and the importing, and then React handles the front end. And I can actually show you guys what that looks like. We have a beer finder. Let's see. And what this does is allows you to see beers that are near you, and this is React. And so you can search, for example, let's see, Tampa, Florida. If anybody's in Tampa, this is one of our clients that uses our beer finder. You can actually see, this is, I don't know why it's taking so long. It's probably just my screen sharing, but you can see the data comes from Laravel and pushes to a search service, and then we query the search service based on the user's locations. And this is all in React. So you can see like, okay, I want to find this is a particular place, local draft house, and then you can also kind of see that the map is moving around. So React is good for a lot of things. This is built in React, just the front end, but it's not good for everything. Definitely pick the right tool for the job. And again, like this has nothing to do with WordPress, and so we didn't build it in WordPress. So I think picking the right tool for the job is always going to be a good move.
Let's wrap this up. Julien, thank you so much for giving us your time today and teaching us new things. Julien, where can we find you?
Yeah, good question. My name is pretty much tells all. Julien with an E, Julien Melissas. I'm on Twitter for nerd stuff. I'm on Instagram, like seeing motorcycle pictures and food because I do a lot of cooking. And then if you want to check out the company, it's just craftbeak.com. I do want to say anybody who was in my talk last year, I hope that you noticed this was a lot quieter. I was traveling last year and I was like on a street and it was like so loud. But the co-working space I was in was really loud too. So I was in Lyon, I was in France. But now I'm just back home. So I hope that this was a little bit easier to hear. Yeah.
Sounded great, Julien. Thank you so much. And we will see you all in track 0 in about 11 minutes.
Awesome. Thanks.